Hello everyone, today we're going to look at all you need to know about variables in Java. So we're going to start with the definition of variables, look at the declaration phase of variables, continue with the initialization phase, and finally look at an example of both declaration and initialization for variables. So let's start by the definition. So variables are just like data containers, and they store values in memory. We can then call these variables again in our code to use them in any method that we want. So for an example, to make it easier to understand, if we have, for instance, int, which stands for integer in Java, age equal 25. So here we have integer, that is the data type. We have age. Age is the variable name. So the variable is called age. So we could write anything else, just like distance or apple or house, anything. But here we have age as a name because that's what makes sense for this example. And 25 is the value that will be stored in memory. Stored in memory. So these are the three steps of both the declaration phase and the initialization phase. So we need the data type because we need to know the variable is which type of data. Is it an integer? Is it a Boolean? Is it a double value? We need to know the data type. So that's why we need the data type here, integer. The second step is the variable name. So we need to give a name to our variable, and that name needs to make sense, to give sense to the variable. So here, if our code is about age, for instance, age gaps in schools, then age will be a proper variable name for that variable. And then we need the equal sign to assign this variable, to a specific value. So variables really works just like data containers because age here is just like a data container that is called age. And then the value 25 will just enter that box, enter that container. So each time we will call the value, the variable age, we will actually call the value 25, since 25 is the value stored in the box named age. We will see other examples in the next slides. So for the declaration phase, we have all the same data types that we saw previously. So we have byte, we have short, int, long, float, double, boolean, char. All of these data types can be used with variables. Now, the way we write the declaration phase is first, as we just saw, the data type, continued by the name of the variable, followed by a semicolon. So that structure is the same for all the different data types. So for int, long, float, double, char, boolean, or any data type, we use the same structure. So we first write the data type, then we write the name of the variable, and finally we put a semicolon. Now it's important to note that all data types have a default value. So for integers, for example, the default value is 0. For long values, the default value is 0L. L is for long. For float, it's 0.0f. For double, it's 0.0d. For char, it's the null character, which is this on the right. And for Boolean, the default value is always false. It's important to note that in Java, initialization is needed in order to have an output on the console. So these default values, you will not be able to see them printed in the console. So if you try to print, for example, Boolean good and then semicolon, you will not see false being the output in the console, because we need another part. We need the declaration, but we also need the initialization in Java. So let's look at the initialization now. So for the initialization, the only difference with the declaration phase is that in the initialization phase, we need to give a value to our variable. So for instance, for the first one, in the declaration phase, we had integer age semicolon. So age didn't have a value. It only had the default value 0, but we didn't assign for the variable age any particular value. So in the initialization phase, we actually give a value to the variable. So age here has a value of 25. Distance here has a value of 4 million, etc. Here, revenue has the value of 32 million, and so on and so forth. For the char data type, all values given to a variable must be between two quotations, two single quotations, just like that. And for the rest, you can choose your values. An important note is that for constants, we should use the keyword final. So if, for example, you're writing a code and the code will need a variable just like minimum age, which will be always equal to 18. So that number will never change. Minimum age will always be equal to 18. So because that's a constant and should never be changed, we add the keyword final just before the data type. For example, here it's integer. So we start our initialization phase with the keyword final. So that says that minimum age is a variable that should never be changed. So now if you try to change the variable minimum age afterward by making it equal to 21, for example, the console will output an error because you're trying to change the value of a constant that should never be changed. Now let's look at an example. So for practice, you have this code that prints the number of cakes sold by a baker in a day. So we see here the initialization, and here we print a phrase. So a sentence, the baker sold a certain value, cakes. So try to solve that problem, and we will see the answer in the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to see the answer. It's the baker sold 43 cakes. So here, cakes is a variable. It has the data type int and the value 43. So 43 is the value stored in the variable cakes. So cakes acts just like a container, and it contains the value 43, and the name of that container or that variable is cakes. So here, when we call cakes, we actually call the value stored inside the variable or inside the container that is called cakes. So the value that will be outputted is actually 43. So that's why we have the answer: the baker sold 43 cakes. So thank you so much for listening and have a great day.